She was laughing on speakerphone when the plan slipped out. "I'll file right after the gala," Avery said, clinking a glass against something that sounded expensive. "He's so busy closing quarter end he won't see it coming. By Christmas, I'm out, and I'm not leaving with scraps." A man's voice, smooth, careful, drifted through my kitchen like a draft. "You'll be fine," he said. "I've got the condo. We'll sell his precious espresso machine, and half his shares will be yours anyway." I didn't cough or drop anything. I just stood there with my hand on the pantry door, the phone lying face up on the counter, our smart speaker doing what I'd told it to do last month for recipe reminders. Auto answer when Avery called from her Apple ID, and route the audio to the kitchen. It was a stupid little hack I'd set up so I wouldn't get flour on my screen. Tonight, it became a wiretap I hadn't asked for. The call ended. The house went back to the hum that made our Austin townhouse feel like an aquarium. Refrigerator, HVAC, the soft whine of the wine fridge Avery said we needed when she launched her pop-up fashion label. I stared at the marble island we'd argued about for 3 weeks. We'd picked the slab together. She'd picked him alone. I'm Nolan. I build boring things that make loud money, point-of-sale systems for boutique retailers. I grew up in Waco, left for UT, and stayed in Austin because I like breakfast tacos and companies that survive recessions. When we married, Avery was a stylist, hustling styled shoots on Instagram, talent and charm for days. I loved how she saw color in a world I measured in margins. We did a prenup, not because I didn't trust her, but because I'd watched my dad get cracked open in a community property state. And I promised myself I would never be that exposed. Our attorney, Patel, made it simple. Keep premarital property separate. Agree that business equity earned from Nolan's pre-existing company stays separate. Add an adultery clause that would invalidate any spousal support. It felt clinical then. It felt like oxygen now. I didn't call Avery. I didn't storm her gala. I opened our shared notes, the one we used for grocery lists and trip packing. 3 new entries blinked at me like flares. Bid list. Espresso machine must go. He loves it. Vintage Patek. Books. Take the signed ones. Rug in Nolan's office. Key dates. Serve papers week after Q4 close. Ask Cole re-condo timing. We should move quick before Ari heads south. Cole. The voice. A client who'd turned into friend who never posted his wife because she hates photos. I copied everything into a folder on my desktop named Lists. Then I did what I do when I'm scared. I made a plan. Step 1. Inventory. I walked the house with my phone camera like an appraiser, narrating each piece of furniture, art, gadget that was clearly mine or ours or hers. I photographed serial numbers, receipts, sent emails to vendors to reissue invoices to the proper entity. People think I own it means my name is on the Amex. Not here. I'd built a lattice of little LLCs for risk and tax reasons, and half the things in our home technically belonged to a landlord with my signature. Step 2. Title. I pulled the title files. Car. Leased under my company's fleet program. House. Bought after marriage, but with my separate property as down payment and a deed of trust from Reed Holdings, LLC, back to myself. We'd recorded it because Patel told me to. That lien looked theoretical when things were good. Tonight, it looked like Kevlar. Step 3. Silence. I texted Avery. Break a leg. How's the show? She replied with a photo of silver fabric and teeth. It is not courage to sit still when your chest feels like glass. It is discipline. I measured my breath the way my therapist taught me after my dad died, counted to 6, and opened a blank spreadsheet. Tab 1, Timeline. Tab 2, Contracts. Tab 3. The parts of my life I loved enough to fight for. By midnight, I'd finished a list titled, Everything She Touched. It wasn't revenge. It was a map. The map began with boxes no one sees until they stop getting paid. Leases, licenses, subscriptions, maintenance contracts. If you want to know who owns what, ignore Instagram. Follow the invoices. Avery's pop-up label, AVR Studio, had a storefront she called Temporary But Vibey, a 12-month sublease inside a renovated warehouse on East 6th. On paper, AVR Studio leased fixtures and point-of-sale hardware from Merchant Orchard, the same company that made my money. Merchant Orchard leased those fixtures from Reed Retail Services, an LLC I'd formed to keep hardware depreciated cleanly. I'd built the system that moved equipment like chess pieces on a board. Now I moved my queen. Draft a UCC1 financing statement for Reed Retail Services on AVR Studios fixtures, inventory, and accounts receivable. I emailed our in-house counsel. I want a perfected security interest by tomorrow. Within 24 hours, the state of Texas had a record that if AVR Studio defaulted, the racks, the registers, the rolling mirror with the custom brass handle would all be mine. The espresso machine she'd put on the bid list? It wasn't ours. It belonged to our kitchen, which belonged to Reed Townhouse LLC, which had a deed of trust on it from Reed Holdings to secure my separate property. The Patek? My grandfather's, documented in the prenup as separate property. The signed books? My dad's, my college mentor's, a first edition of McCullough's Truman with coffee stains Avery called authentic. The rug in my office? Purchased through a corporate program. The invoice had Reed Interiors as buyer. I heard my dad's voice, a man who once delivered bread at 3 a.m. so I could have new cleats. Son, you don't have to be mean. You do have to be precise. That week, I retained Patel formally. She read my spreadsheet, tapping a pen, and said one sentence that became my oxygen. You don't win divorces by shouting. You win them by paper. Will the adultery clause hold? I asked. If we can prove it, and if a judge doesn't throw it out as punitive, she said, nodding. But in Texas, fault can influence division. Your bigger shield is separate property, and the UCC lien is inspired. I feel like a villain, I said. You feel like a grown man protecting his work, she corrected. There is a difference. Cole had a name now. Cole Maddox, real estate developer. His LinkedIn was a highlight reel of ribbon cuttings and sunglasses. He posted pre-sales of a condo building on the lake with floor-to-ceiling windows and a lobby that looked like a spaceship. A lot of real estate folks are legitimate. Some are magicians who turn hard money into hot air. His company had a UCC filing too, 3 of them, from a bank that didn't look small. I didn't stalk, I subscribed. To condo association emails, to county clerk alerts, to a title plant service that pinged me when Maddox Holdings recorded anything. Every beep was a drum in a score I didn't compose. Avery came home from the gala glowing like a lamp. I'm starving, she said, peeling off her heels. You would have died. The room was insane. I saw clips, I said, passing her leftover pizza. Our dog, Brisket, thumped his tail like the only honest metronome in the house. She kissed me on the cheek. You're the best. I'm beat. Don't wake me in the morning. Of course, I said. I watched her disappear upstairs with the same stunned patience you feel when a storm crawls over a highway, and you can see the exit if you don't flinch. The next morning, I packed a duffel and moved into the guest room. Not because I'm dramatic. Because you don't sleep next to a grenade you know is live. On Monday, AVR Studio missed its inventory payment. I didn't turn the screws. I sent an email to the store manager I'd hired for Avery when she insisted she didn't need one. "We'll carry the note for 30 days, I wrote. "After that, Reed Retail Services will exercise its rights under the security agreement." I signed it with my full name. I wasn't owning her. I was owning the obligations we created together and the ones she created alone. Precision, not cruelty. But even precision cuts. The papers came on a Thursday like a thunderclap. Process server at the gate, manila envelope, Nolan Reed? As if I might be anyone else in the 20 seconds that mattered. "Petition for divorce," the cover sheet announced in thick font. I set it on the island, texted Patel a photo. "Served. Do not engage," she replied. "We'll respond Friday. Come in at 2. Avery texted 3 minutes later. "Can we talk when I get home?" No heart emojis, no exclamation points, white space. I poured coffee and waited for the panic that didn't arrive. I'd felt it 2 weeks earlier on a tile floor, holding a phone that had become a telescope into a life that didn't include me. Panic's job was done. Strategy clocked in. At 2, Patel slid her reading glasses down and tapped the petition. She's asking for a disproportionate share of the marital estate based on alleged emotional neglect, spousal maintenance despite the waiver, and exclusive use of the residence during the proceedings. "Do we contest exclusive use?" I asked. "No," she said. "We offer a temporary order. She keeps the house. You move to your rental downtown. You keep paying the mortgage, taxes, and insurance through Reed Townhouse LLC. But we add a clause that any such payments are reimbursements under the deed of trust if community funds are used. In exchange, she does not dispose of any property, business assets, or participate in dissipation. We'll attach your UCC filings and list of separate property." "Will that look cold?" I asked. "It will look like governance," she said. "Judges like governance." That night, Avery stood in the doorway of the guest room like a kid at the edge of a pool. "I didn't think you'd be served today," she said. "I did," I said softly. She bit the inside of her cheek, the tell I'd loved once for the way it made her human. "Nolan, I don't want a war." "Then don't start one," I said. "Sit. Talk to me like I'm someone you respected before you rehearsed speeches with Cole." Her eyes flinched when I said his name, and then it was gone. "Okay." We grew apart. You buried yourself in work. I built something from nothing, and you always made it feel like a hobby. We stopped touching. I tried to tell you. "You did," I said. "And then you stopped. And then you found someone who told you you were oxygen." Her face hardened into a mask I didn't recognize. "You can be cruel." "I can be precise," I said. "Our prenup will hold. My separate property will hold. I will not fund a life where I'm a footnote. You know that, because you wrote a bid list. Color drained." "What?" "Your notes sync to iCloud, our iCloud. I turned on auto answers in the kitchen so I didn't get flour on the phone. And I heard you. That's on me for being sloppy. It's on you for doing this in my kitchen." She shook her head. "You recorded me?" "No," I said. "I listened in the room I pay for." "Avery, I'm not calling you names. I'm not making a scene. I'm giving you clean lines. Take your clothes, your personal things, your equipment that you bought with your money. I'll keep my company, my separate assets, and the fixtures, inventory, and accounts of AVR Studio will remain collateral for the debt it owes. That's it." "You'd take my store?" she whispered. "I'd take the risk I already carry," I said. "If you keep paying, you keep it. If you don't, I own what I financed. That isn't revenge. That's a ledger." She stood there long enough for Brisket to wander in and nudge her knee. She scratched his head like muscle memory and left. In bed, the ceiling fan sounded like a helicopter. I stared at the shadow it made on the ceiling and thought about all the places I wanted to be that weren't here. A booth at Juan in a Million, a jet bridge to anywhere, my dad's truck with the smell of yeast and coffee. I didn't sleep. I didn't need to. Morning comes whether you deserve it or not. By Friday, Patel had filed our response, attached exhibits with tabs, and secured a temporary orders hearing for Tuesday. "Wear a suit," she said. "We'll be elegant. Elegance wins." We were 3 minutes into the courthouse elevator when I met the other woman. Except she wasn't the other woman. She was the other man's wife. "Are you Nolan?" she asked, looking at the floor numbers more than at me. She had a tote bag filled with file folders and a face that looked like it had learned the difference between pain and panic a while ago. "I am," I said. "I'm May," she said. "Cole's wife." The elevator dinged. I followed May onto the marble, and we stood in the liminal space where people whisper truths they can't say in rooms with microphones. "You didn't know," she said. It wasn't a question. "I knew 2 weeks ago," I said. "You?" She shrugged the way you shrug when you decide not to cry in public anymore. "A year. The condo he's been promising, it's mine. My dad put the down payment on it when we married. Cole titled it in his company and told me it was for taxes. He's the kind of man who thinks paperwork is different from real life. I'm here for a TRO so he can't move funds out of the development account. And because I saw your name on the docket and thought, we might both like not being alone for 15 minutes. I laughed, a sound that sounded like I'd swallowed gravel. "Nice to meet you." She nodded. "You too?" I texted Patel. "May Maddox here. Friendly." Patel replied with a thumbs up, and then went back to the part of lawyering where you stand still and breathe like you're lowering a heart rate with thought. In court, Avery wore the kind of cream suit she'd once called effortless. Cole wasn't there. He doesn't do court, he does brunch. Patel rose like a tide. "Your Honor, we're not here to fight. We're here to keep the lights on in an orderly way. My client will move to his downtown rental. He will continue to pay the mortgage and taxes through the LLC that owns the residence, with reimbursements to be calculated under the deed of trust. He asks only that the court enjoin any dissipation of business assets and recognize the validity of the UCC filings covering AVR Studios fixtures, inventory, and accounts receivable." Avery's lawyer, an overconfident man with a wedding band and a tan, objected without objecting. "Your Honor, Mrs. Reed needs exclusive possession of the home and continued support. Mr. Reed is the moneyed spouse. He has controlled the finances, leaving Mrs. Reed with limited access." Patel didn't even sigh. The prenuptial agreement waives spousal maintenance, and the community assets are minimal. Most of what the other side calls control is corporate governance. Nevertheless, we propose a neutral CPA to marshal the community estate and handle temporary funds for ordinary expenses. The judge, a woman whose eyes told me she'd seen every version of this show, leaned forward. "Any allegations of fault I need to know about right now?" Patel's face didn't flicker. "We will reserve fault for final hearing, Your Honor." The judge granted exclusive use to Avery, ordered me to pay the house bills through the LLC with reimbursements preserved, appointed a CPA, and signed our agreed injunction. No selling, hiding, moving business assets. She initialed my UCC filings like they were boring. Boring wins. Outside, May sat beside me on a wooden bench meant for people who can't stand still. "He'll try to move money," she said, flipping a folder. "He always does." "I can ping the title plant," I said. "I'll set alerts on Maddox Holdings, Maddox Devco, Maddox anything. If he records something, I'll know." She smirked. "You're useful." "You sound like my mother," I said. And for the first time in 2 weeks, I smiled without a wince. That afternoon, AVR Studio missed a second payment. I did not repossess. I sent a letter through counsel offering a forbearance agreement in exchange for monthly reporting. When you own the paper, you don't need to bang on doors. You wait. You document. You walk past the mess like it's a paint spill on a drop cloth, not on a carpet. At midnight, my phone buzzed with a title alert. "Deed of Trust, Maddox Devco to Bridge Street Capital, 3.1 years." I forwarded it to May. She sent back a screenshot of a wire transfer, $310,000 from AVR Studio Marketing to Maddox Devco. Memo, investor promo. Dissipation, I texted Patel. She replied with 2 words, "Thank you." The day Avery realized own could be spelled O was the day she asked to meet at a coffee shop that sells $7 pour-overs like compliance. She walked in with sunglasses on, then took them off because we are not celebrities. We are people who sign checks. "I don't have time for a scene," she said, clutching her cup like a prop. "I need you to stop strangling my store." "I'm not strangling it," I said. "I'm stabilizing it. If you want to keep it, send me the sales reports and I'll extend the forbearance." "I don't answer to you," she said, color rising. "You liked it when I was small. You loved that I needed you." "I loved you," I said. "Which is different." She leaned in. "You're not getting half my label because you think it's cute to file forms." "I don't want half your label," I said truly. "I want the debt I hold secured, and I want the judge to see that when you say I starved you, I kept the lights on." She laughed without humor. "The judge will see a man trying to punish a woman who outgrew him." "Maybe," I said. "And maybe she'll see a woman who moved $310,000 from her business to her boyfriend's shell." The memo line says, "Investor promo, Avery. You're not an investor. You're a mark." She froze. People freeze 2 ways, like prey or like soldiers. Avery froze like a soldier, eyes sweeping, assessing exits. "You're monitoring my accounts?" she said. "No," I said, and it was even true. "Your CPA is, per the injunction. The wire was unwise." Her jaw flexed. "I'll replace it." "With what?" I asked. "Silence is less dramatic than people think. It doesn't crackle, it droops. I'll get coal to pay it back," she said finally, like a line read off a card. "Great," I said. "Have him wire the funds to the AVR account with a memo that says loan, and we'll paper a note junior to mine. If he refuses, you have your answer." She looked like she wanted to throw her cup, then looked at the barista and decided to be kind to the only person in the room who didn't deserve a show. She stood. "You didn't have to make it like this," she said. "You did," I said, "when you picked a man who calls debt a lifestyle." 2 days later, no wire. A week later, AVR Studios' landlord sent a 3-day pay or quit notice. I made a call to the landlord's lender, a regional bank whose loan officer had met me at a charity softball game. "If you're selling that note," I said, "I want it." "We don't sell performing notes," he said. "It's not performing," I said. By Thursday, Reed Property Partners owned the note. By Monday, the landlord, now my borrower, signed a deed in lieu of foreclosure on the master lease for that section of the warehouse. We recorded it before lunch. AVR Studio wasn't my tenant, it was my subtenant. 2 days and one neutral letter later, AVR had a new landlord with a willingness to discuss payment plans. Sometimes, ownership is just the patience to make phone calls others are too proud to make. May texted me a photo of Cole with a caption. "He thinks he's charming." "He is," I replied. "Charm is a currency. It doesn't scan at the bank." "Are you always like this?" she asked. "Like what?" "Measured." "No," I typed. "Only when I'm scared." She sent a heart. Not romantic, human. The repossession trucks came at dawn on a Tuesday like a mercy. I was there with a clipboard and a locksmith and a U-Haul that had seen too many apartments to judge anybody. The store manager cried. I wanted to hand her cash. I handed her my card instead. "Come see me at Merchant Orchard," I said. "We're hiring ops. You shouldn't pay for their mistakes." Avery showed up halfway through, hair in a knot, sweatshirt swallowing her. "You can't do this," she said. "I can," I said, and I hated that the words felt like stepping on someone's hand to climb out of a hole. "And I have a signed receipt from last month that says you read the security agreement." "It's my art," she said, voice breaking. "It's my collateral," I said softly. "Art lives elsewhere." We loaded the mirror with the brass handle last. I touched the handle like a goodbye to a future I once thought we both wanted. On the way out, I left a paper on the counter. "Option to repurchase," the title read. "Pay the past due amount, sign the junior lien, and these items return. Precision makes room for mercy. Mercy is cheaper than regret." By Christmas, my downtown rental felt like a wholesome witness protection program. Concrete floors, a view of the river, neighbors who wanted to nod in the elevator and not know anyone's last name. I bought a cheap fake tree from Target and decorated it with the patience of a man avoiding email. On December 22nd, May called. "He's moving on the condo," she said, breathless and calm at once. "He scheduled cleaners and a photographer." "You have a TRO," I said. "He can't sell." "He's not trying to sell," she said. "He's trying to take my things out. Can you—" I didn't let her finish. "Text me the address. I'm 5 minutes away." The condo lived in a building where front desks outsourced their snobbery to marble. I walked to the counter and used my father's voice, the one that gets coffee delivered at 3 a.m. "Afternoon. I'm here at Mrs. Maddox's request," I said. "There's an order in place." "Do you have a key?" the concierge asked. "I have a court order," I said, and slid a PDF across the counter. He stared at it the way people stare at legal paper when they aren't paid to interpret it and are paid to avoid liability. "Security will meet you upstairs," he said. On the 20th floor, a man with a portable toolbox and a haircut that said "probation" was unscrewing cabinet pulls. "We're staging," he said, not looking at me. "You're stealing," I said. "Put the pulls back." "You a cop?" he asked. "No," I said. "I'm worse. I read loan docs." Cole walked in, wearing a sweater that cost more than my rent. "You can't be here," he said, voice dripping the kind of confidence that is mostly practice. "I can," I said, and I wasn't sure if I was talking to him or to the boy inside me who wanted to leave fights to bigger men. May stepped out from behind me, phone raised. "Hi, honey," she said. "Smile." Cole paled. "May, this is ridiculous." "What's ridiculous is using my father's gift as a showroom for your girlfriends," she said, voice no louder than weather. "What's ridiculous is wiring funds from a woman's business to your LLC and calling it marketing. What's ridiculous is the part of you that thinks paperwork can't bite. He laughed, no humor. You two deserve each other. Maybe, I said. We read. He left, muttering the way men mutter when charm bounces off a stone. The handyman shrugged, pocketed his driver, and left the pulls on the counter. May and I stood in the silent living room and looked at the view like it owed us something. Thank you, she said. I like instructions, I said. She grinned. So do judges. At home, I found a Christmas card in my mailbox from Avery. No handwritten note. Just a photo of her with brisket in front of our townhouse that was mine and hers, and neither. The caption read, "Grateful for growth." I poured bourbon and toasted the word growth like a saint I didn't believe in. On December 27th, AVR Studio filed for Chapter 11. It was a posture more than a plan. I hired counsel and filed a motion for relief from stay on my collateral. The judge granted it with a yawn. The fixtures came back. The rolling mirror went to storage. I put a sticky note on it. Do not sell. Not because of money, because of memory. People think owning everything she touched feels like swagger. It felt like mopping. The condos, the leases, the fixtures, the loan notes, the boring scaffolding that holds up pretty pictures. If her fingerprints were on it, so were mine. I didn't want trophies. I wanted stability, and stability is loud paperwork. On New Year's Eve, I ate tacos alone and fell asleep at 10:30. At midnight, fireworks woke the river. I lay there listening to joy I didn't feel and let the thought I'd been batting away stand in the doorway. You could let this harden you, or you could let it make you specific. Specific about who you love, specific about what you own, specific about what you refuse to carry anymore. Final hearings are not television. They are long, fluorescent, and held together by copy paper and coffee. Ours landed on a cold morning in February, when even Austin pretended to be winter. Avery looked tired in a way makeup can't fix. I felt something like grief without the romance of poetry. You can love a person and also love the version of yourself that doesn't need their approval. Patel opened with a slide deck that should have won an award for all the ways boredom saves men's lives. She walked the court through our premarital agreement, my separate property schedules, the deed of trust on the townhouse, the UCC filings on the store. She never said adultery. She said fault once and let it hang like a coat you didn't need anymore. Avery's lawyer tried the soft focus approach. Mrs. Reed devoted herself to Nolan's life, Your Honor. She curated his home, supported his late nights, hosted clients. She launched a business that benefited from his platform. And from his capital, Patel said, nodding, which is why he protected that capital. Avery took the stand. I watched her hands. They'd always been my favorite part of her, the way they moved when she described cloth like it was alive. Now they were still. Did you move funds from AVR Studio to Maddox Devco? Patel asked. Avery glanced at her attorney, then at the judge. Yes, she said. I believed it was an investment in marketing. Did you sign a note? Patel asked. No. Did you receive any consideration? Patel asked. No. Do you understand why Mr. Reed took steps to secure the store's assets? Patel asked, voice so gentle a person could forget the word steps meant filings. Avery swallowed. Yes, she whispered. Patel rested. She did not gloat. She packed her pen like a surgeon after a clean incision. The judge ruled like a person who didn't enjoy drama at breakfast. The prenuptial agreement is valid and enforceable, she said. The townhouse remains under the control of the LLC, subject to the deed of trust, with reimbursement claims preserved. Mrs. Reed will receive the community assets enumerated by the CPA, including her personal effects and any items proven as her separate property. There will be no spousal maintenance. She looked at Avery and then at me. You two are young. Do not make this uglier than it needs to be. Outside, Avery stood with her head against the courthouse wall like a person who got off a roller coaster and realized the ground still moves. I walked past her without speaking because sometimes mercy is not making a speech. May texted. He took a plea. Wire fraud. He'll be out in 2 years with an MBA in humility. Tell your dad I said thank you for the condo that kept you safe, I replied. He died last spring, she texted. But I tell him stuff anyway. I talked to mine too, I typed, and then sat in my car and cried like it wasn't about a woman at all. 2 weeks later, the townhouse keys traded hands in a paragraph drafted by Patel. Avery moved to a rental in South Lamar. I sent her an email with a spreadsheet attached titled Option List. She could repurchase the AVR fixtures for pennies on the dollar if she wanted to start again without coal. She didn't reply. That was its own answer. I sold the AVR mirror to a theater company that needed props for a play about a marriage. I took a photo of the brass handle before they loaded it. Memory is not a museum. It's a box you take down some nights, touch what you need, and put away. Brisket came to live with me. Dogs choose stability, or snacks, sometimes both. Owning everything she touched turns out to mean owning everything I tried to ignore. My own appetite for being the hero, my fear of being small, my reflex to turn love into management. I learned to call things what they are. The townhouse wasn't ours. It was an asset I enjoyed. The store wasn't her dream. It was a business with a P&L and a debt service. The marriage wasn't fate. It was 2 choices repeated over time until the model broke. I chose what to keep. I kept Merchant Orchard and hired 2 store managers I'd poached from AVR. They were better than me at explaining our product to humans. I kept Reed Property Partners and stopped pretending I was accidentally a landlord. I kept the espresso machine because some things are non-negotiable. I chose what to give away. I donated the profit from the AVR repossession to a fund that pays for women-owned retailers to get legal consults before they sign a lease. If I'd been better, I would have carved that out when we were in love. I wasn't. I carved it now. May and I kept in touch the way people at the same sink do, sending photos of paperwork, jokes that land because we speak the same language, silence that doesn't need apology. She got her condo free and clear after a settlement with Maddox Devco's lenders, who didn't want the PR optics of a widow carrying a debt she didn't vote for. She kept the cabinet pulls because life is petty, and that's okay. One afternoon in May, I saw Avery across Congress Avenue holding a coffee and laughing at something that wasn't a joke. Her hair was shorter. She wore sneakers with a dress that would have cost a rent payment last year, but looked like cotton today. She didn't see me. I didn't call her name. The ache that rose was softer than grief and sharper than nostalgia. It said, "You are a chapter. You are not a condemnation." That night, my mom called to tell me she'd sold the house I grew up in. "It's time," she said. "Your father would have hated how many appraisals it took." "He would have loved how many spreadsheets," I said. "You okay, son?" she asked. "I am," I said, and I didn't feel like I was lying. I wrote Avery one last email. No subject line, no mask. "I'm returning the last of your family photos via Patel," I typed. I kept none. Not because I don't remember us, because I do. I hope you make something beautiful that has nothing to do with me. It would be a shame if your art had to share a caption with my name forever. N. I didn't send it. I printed it and put it in the box with her pictures so that the only person who ever reads it is the version of me who still needed to say it. Summer in Austin smells like sunscreen and asphalt. I biked the trail, learned to cook something besides steak, said no to a deal that would have made me more money and less sleep. The houseplants didn't die. Growth is never where I expected. One morning, May sent a photo of a little plaque on a condo wall. In memory of Tom Nguyen, who believed in cabinets and daughters. I laughed so hard I scared Brisket. I sent back a picture of the espresso machine with a sticky note. In memory of a woman who taught me to buy linen and file liens. Maybe that's crass. Or maybe it's proof that humor is the only way this side of the ledger makes any sense. The last thing she touched that I ended up owning was the wedding venue she tried to book for a relaunch party. I didn't plan it. Reed Property Partners had bought the note on the warehouse AVR once occupied. We'd subdivided the parcel, leased one side to a furniture maker, and marketed the other as an event space because Austin would turn a parking garage into a place to drink if you hang Edison bulbs in it. I was in the office when my manager brought me a file. Inquiry for June, she said. Client is Avery Reed Events, LLC. Any relation? Complicated, I said, smiling like someone who can afford to be gracious. She wants the Saturday we blocked for the food truck festival, she said. But she offered full freight and a cleaning deposit double. Take the deposit, I said. Move the trucks to Sunday. You're sure? She asked. I'm sure, I said. And add a rider, insurance certs, advance payment, strict vendor list. It wasn't about revenge. It was about information. People reveal themselves when they sign contracts. She signed. We booked. We put her name on the calendar like any other client. The night of the event, I stood in the back with a headset and a clipboard. The way I do when I need to remember, I'm good at logistics. Avery walked in wearing black and a lanyard that said, Producer. For a second, a whole life flickered. Us at 30, us at 60, us introducing a band I didn't like but learned to tolerate. Then it vanished. She saw me, blinking like a deer in a warehouse. You own this? She asked, not angry, just tired. My LLC does, I said. Welcome. She glanced around at the string lights and the polished concrete and the bar that used to be her dressing rack. You win, she said. It wasn't a game, I said. And if it was, we both lost. She nodded. Fair. Vendors filled the space with tacos and elderflower cocktails. Photographers pinned mood boards to their chests. My staff ran the event like a ballet no one noticed. Avery worked. I watched. We didn't talk again. At 10, a singer with a guitar covered a song we'd once danced to in a kitchen that belongs to a spreadsheet now. I stepped outside and sat on a loading dock, because sometimes a man needs a slab of concrete to remind him that no matter how many papers he files, he is mostly water and bone and ache. May found me there. I figured you'd be hiding near a truck, she said, handing me a Topo Chico. You figured right, I said. She's good at this, May said, nodding toward the warehouse. She always was, I said. You okay? She asked. I am, I said. Some nights more than others. We sat in silence and listened to the hum that never leaves a city, no matter how late it is. The venue glowed behind us. The river moved like a secret held by people who knew how to keep them. At midnight, I signed the closeout sheets and walked the perimeter picking up cups because ownership is 90% trash bags. Avery passed me near the door. Thank you for the space, she said. You earned it, I said, and meant it. She nodded like a person cataloging a truth for later. Take care, Nolan, she said. You too, I said. She left. I watched her taillights merge with a line of cars and went back inside to check the mop bucket. People like to end stories with a wedding or an indictment or a sunset. My ending is a spreadsheet where the liabilities column doesn't make my stomach flip. Brisket snored under my desk while I closed the books on Q3. May sold the condo and moved to a smaller place closer to her sister. She texted me pictures of a plant that refuses to die and a cabinet pull that fell off anyway. We speak less now. That's healthy. Shared crises are real. So is the rest of your life. Avery soft opened a tiny studio on the east side. She didn't call it AVR. She called it Saturday. I drove past one morning early enough to not be weird and saw her sweeping the sidewalk with a broom she would have hired a person for 2 years ago. She looked content, or tired, or both. She caught me staring, lifted the broom in a salute, and I saluted back. That was our truce. You build, I build. We don't tell stories about each other we wouldn't say out loud. If there's a moral, it isn't win harder. I own everything she touched, if you draw the map a certain way. The townhouse, the store fixtures, the event space, the notes and liens, and boring little lines that say who answers when a check bounces. But ownership is a tool, not a trophy. I used it to make a landing where there could have been a fall. I used it to pay the people who shouldn't bleed for our mistakes. I used it to sleep. One afternoon, Patel stopped by the office to sign something that could have been e-signed. But she prefers a pen for things that feel like endings. You did well, she said, recapping her Mont Blanc like a verdict. I did okay, I said. You were elegant, she said. I was afraid, I said. Elegance is fear, you edit, she said, and smiled like a person who's seen men confuse brutality for bravery. Don't forget to live, Nolan. I drove to the lake and sat on a bench with a coffee and watched teenagers do things that look like joy and risk and stupid and necessary. A woman sat at the other end of the bench, reading a paperback with a cracked spine. She looked like the kind of person who returns a grocery cart and rescues spiders instead of smashing them. We didn't talk. We didn't need to. The bench was enough. When the sun dropped, I went home to a kitchen that is just a kitchen again. I ground beans, pulled a shot, and watched crema bloom. It tasted like the first morning I woke up alone and realized that solitude isn't a sentence. It's a room. You can decorate it with whatever you want. Linen or leans, espresso or echoes, silence or the sound of a dog's tail on tile. She planned to leave me with nothing. I left with paper and a pulse. Everything she touched that I ended up owning taught me the same thing my dad tried to teach me in a bread truck at dawn. Be precise. Be kind where you can. And when you can't, be clean. That is enough. Not for a movie, for a life.